This is a story that I've been wanting to tell. When I was 10 years old, our family went to do mission work with the Church of Christ in Ukraine. And the first place we went was Zaporozhye, and if you've been paying attention to the battles over there, a lot of them have been around Zaporozhye because of the nuclear power plant there. And I remember, because of all the Cold War propaganda, when we had our first worship in the apartment there, I cried. I was 10 years old, and I said, oh, if we make noise, they're going to come in with AK-47s and kill us. But I realized later, if the Russians don't think you're a threat, they're really friendly. The Russian people are really friendly. And the Russian government, if they don't think you're a threat, they're not going to mess with you. And then later, I was 17, and we went to Yalta, Ukraine. And it's a big resort place for Russia. And so our friend was the former taster food protection person for Vladimir Putin. Whenever he went to Ukraine, then she would protect him in that manner. And we were so curious and innocent, we didn't realize that we probably shouldn't ask her a lot of questions about that, but we did. She might have answered one, and then she just stopped talking, and we were like, oh, shoot. Maybe that's kind of disrespectful and dangerous. We didn't think nothing about it because of who, we're kind of a sheltered family. And then later, we got the attention of the Catholic Church, or the Orthodox Church, and so we preached in that neighborhood, in that city, that their kiosk, for the most part, I think the Orthodox Church is decently following Christ, but we preached that their kiosk, where they sell the rosary beads, is not godly because it's making a business of saying, well, you got to have this if you want to have this blessing. It's making a business of God's blessings, and it's not godly. There was this old man in the neighborhood that was literally screaming and yelling at me, and he was saying, oh, you're an American spy, blah, blah, blah. And I always believe that the reason he said that, the reason he got angry and he tried to make, people in the neighborhood angry with us, saying bad things about us, which it didn't really work because people loved us, was because of what we said about the church. And so, fast forward, I'm 23 and I'm in Russia. Went to Russia to do mission work again. I don't know if these are connected situations, but I kind of think it could be. But anyways, I was going back from the end of the mission. It was like 3 or 4 months. Got to go to an English camp with the kids. They wanted an American speaker there. We played soccer. I taught them a little bit of English and had a nice time. And on my way back, I was riding the train alone, and in those old train cars, old Russian train cars, there's 4 beds because train rides are pretty long. A lot of them don't have seats, they have the bed so you can sleep. So there was an older gentleman there by himself, and then an older woman. She was alone. They weren't together, they were separate. And then there was a man. He was about 35 years old, I think. He was a very professional looking, like an FBI agent type guy. And he stared at me the entire time. Like an intentionally intimidating stare. Like, I'm going to crush your existence or I'm going to kill you. And we were in that. I was... it made me really nervous at first, and then he did it for longer and longer and longer. I just had to pray in my heart while I was sitting on the, we were all talking, and I thought to myself, well, he probably thinks I'm some kind of a threat to his country, or he doesn't like Americans or something. And so I thought to tell the story about that Catholic priest or whatever, the guy that got angry and was yelling on the street at us and cussing us out, calling us American spies in front of everybody. And I laughed about it in front of him, and the two other people laughed with me because I said, look, we're just missionaries. We're just here teaching the gospel. And he thought we were all this. I'm like, no. I mean, I wish I had some money from the government, but I don't. Not really. I would, especially nowadays, I wouldn't work for the government. Back then, I might have, you know. But anyways, and even when right at that moment, he started getting even more angry. When I started saying, you know, we're just people, we're just missionaries. And I laughed about that. I laughed about the fact that this man in Yalta who was yelling at us had thought that we were spies. And then, so at that moment, he got more angry. But after that, he got, I believe, a little less angry. But anyways, I went to sleep in my bunk, and I remember waking up, and he was standing this close away from my face. I said a serious prayer before I went to sleep. I said, Lord, you know, I can't do anything. I can't fight these people. You know, they're going to do whatever they want to me. In their country, I'm alone. This guy's bigger and stronger than me. He probably has better training. At that time, I only had some wrestling training from my dad, some karate, and some taekwondo. So I was not about to do anything but be. And one of the things I did when I understood he was intentionally trying to intimidate me, he didn't say hardly a word to me, but I assumed a submissive. I looked down a lot, you know, assumed a submissive position in my demeanor. But anyways, when I woke up, he was looking right at me. You know, my bunk was on the second. It was the second bunk up top. And I zipped up my pack, and I used my pack as a pillow because I was like, well, if he is gonna go through if he's a regular guy that's just mad at me, I don't want him stealing my stuff. And if he's an official guy, he's gonna ask to see my bag, and I'll let him see it. But I slept on it. But anyways, he was staring right at me, and I just went back to sleep. And I didn't give him the satisfaction of scaring me at that time, because you wake up and this dude's right in front of you. The natural thing is to jump. I just shut my eyes, and it was actually, and I believe it was from God that gave me a peace. But honestly, now that I understand Russians, it's like meeting a bear. You gotta let the bear know that you're no one to be trifled with. And sometimes if it's a big bear, you gotta climb a tree. But there's a turkey. But the other thing is, well, wild animals in general, you want to let them know that you're not going to hurt them, and you're not going to let them hurt you. So you gotta, and this concept is true in a lot of situations with a lot of people. You know, you're a strong individual, and you're going to stand your ground. You're going to respect their space, but you're also not going to let yourself be pushed or disrespected. And that's an important thing to remember. And I thank God for the opportunity. And you think about when Paul went to Rome, when he was ready to go to Rome, and these Romans think in methods of human empire, you know. Even when the prophecy about Jesus, you know, they killed the babies because they were thinking about human earthly empire, earthly rule. When you, as a Christian, do things that are godly, it causes the powers that be, whether they're for or against you, to pay attention and think. God can use their fear or their understanding of who you are to protect you, to guide you, to take you to places that he wants you to go. You know, like Paul went to Rome and went before the rulers, the chief men of the land, and was able to preach the gospel. And he spent a lot of time in jail, but it was still worth it. And I just think about that. I think, and the reason I bring this up in a talk is because the way the world is going, we could face, and in Africa, you should pray for them. Many Christians are being killed in Africa. And the first thing that I thought was, well, darkness is going after the Christians in Africa. Because in my experience, the Christians in Africa are some of the strongest who preach the truth without wavering. And they're very devout Christians and very honorable compared to, you know, us American Christians. If we're being honest, we're kind of spoiled. And we've had it pretty easy. So just some things to think about and pray about.